Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to another edition of Football Theory. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, joined by my good friend and the newest member of the On Texas Football family, my man Jeff Howe. We got a lot to get into on the show today. We'll continue the conversation. Yes, last time I got into the explosive plays and what route concepts led to a lot of those explosive plays in the passing game for Texas. We'll continue that conversation, talk about what routes that Texas likes to run a lot of and what route concepts they utilize a lot of, and maybe some route concepts we want to see them use more of within the offense. So we'll dive into that. There's a new member of the Texas coaching staff, Neal Brown, coming on to the coaching staff. We know in some unspecified role. We don't actually know exactly what his role is going to be. My man Jeff Howe actually predicted that, so I'll give him some props. But because of that, Jeff wants to explore exactly what the impact of Neal Brown, what it could be, what his impact could be on the Texas offense. So we'll get into those conversations. Before we do, though, let me thank our sponsor for Football Theory. We're always appreciative of Laura Baker, accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. Football Theory brought to you by Austin realtor Laura Baker and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams. They can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. So please give her a shout today at 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. Thank you very much to the very accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. We really appreciate her and her team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football. All right, Jeff, I want to continue the conversation that we were having last week about explosive route concepts for Texas, and we kind of got into breaking them down, put them into different buckets. We won't dive into that because we don't have the time. So if you missed last week's show, please, I'll tell you, go check it out. Like and subscribe as well, but go check out the show. It'll give you a really good foundation of what we're talking about. But
I got my buckets over here on the side, Rod. So I'm ready to add some more buckets to the pile.
Yeah. So I did the bucket thing again. I know you like the buckets. So I was like, you know what? I'm going kind of with buckets in. So I went kind of buckets and percentiles. I got really fancy and looked at, what routes in terms of the route usage for Texas, what routes they use a lot of, and put them into percentile buckets. So basically, you got 90 or 85 plus percentile buckets. You got 70 to 80 percentile buckets. And I got like 60 percentile buckets. And then after that, we can talk about the routes they don't use a lot of and maybe why they don't. Okay, so the routes, and this is by the way, give shout out to Sports Info Solutions, SIS. That's where a lot of this information came from. So I'll give them props. I got a lot of my stuff, my research and my notes, but then I used a lot of their analytics as well. Okay, so according to the analytics, Texas screen game, Texas runs screens at a 90 percentile rate. I mean, that's as much as pretty much any team in the country. They love the screen game, which makes a lot of sense. You watch Texas, you see a lot of screens, and Sark is brilliant at designing those screens. Other routes in that same bucket would be swing routes, the deep crossers, and also whip jerk ended up being in there, which is a route that we've seen a little bit more of this past season. The deep crossers in there, the post route, the wheel route kind of dropping to a little bit below, probably in the 75, 70 percentile range. Your post route, your wheel route, your angle route, as you call it, the Texas route, I've called it before. Double moves of any kind are also thrown in this bucket, which I like. I think Texas probably should use a lot more double moves. The corner route. And then you get to another kind of drop off where you get the flat route, you get your drags, your overs, and your slants in there. And those are pretty much most of the routes for Texas that are, I would say, 60 percentile and up, or maybe 50 percentile and up. And after that, you get routes that they don't necessarily run a lot of, like dig routes, out routes, curl routes, comebacks, fade routes, straight go routes. Sark doesn't do a ton of those, and the seam routes. Texas doesn't run a lot of. It's come to some of those, but it does back up some of the stuff we talked about last week, where Texas run the screen game. I mean, Texas had, I think, 8 explosive plays just off screens alone, wide receiver screens and running back screen. Sark loves screen, and he loves those deep crossers. I guess those are deep rainbow crossers, as I call them. He loves those routes, and he gets a lot of it. And I remember we looked at it last week. Their explosive pass plays just from crossing routes alone. I counted overs and unders here. So it could be drag routes as well. That was also one of your, talk about buckets. That was one of your most explosive buckets of route concepts. You ended up having, your second most explosive route concepts came from crossing routes of any kind, drags, overs, unders, but some of those deep rainbow crossers too. So that to me just it does line up, or I should say it tracks with some of the stuff we talked about last week about the explosive pass concepts from Texas.
Yeah. Two things I want to explore there, Rod. One, if you look at the way Texas uses their screen game, not necessarily the perimeter screens, but more so screens to the running backs. If you notice how much Sark changes the launch point of the quarterback, which really that's one of the things to me that makes Sark's screen game unique. Sometimes he does move. Sometimes he's stationary. Sometimes it's kind of not even a half roll, almost like a quarter roll. Because as a defensive lineman, what are you taught on a screen pass? If you're chasing the quarterback and you just keep running, that quarterback just keeps dropping. What does it mean? That means it's a screen. Stick your foot around and go the other way. Well, if the quarterback if he's stationary or half rolling, it just completely screws up all your rules as a defensive lineman on how to defend a screen pass. So I dig the way Sark can manipulate the defense based on the quarterback's movement. If you notice a lot of times on Texas screens, the quarterback might not move as much, but for the running backs and the offensive line, the screen is set up exactly the same, and they develop quick, almost like you don't have a time to get a bead on Texas running the screen. So I love the way Sark designs his screen game. The other one is there's two different concepts that, off the top of my head, unless I'm wrong, I don't remember Texas utilizing all that much in the red zone. And with as much as this offense struggled in the red zone, I'd like to see more of this. The whip routes, the jerk routes like we talked about, and just simple pick plays. Like, I don't know if Sark was just trying to, just out talent people in the red zone, or what the deal was, but it seems like his red zone creativity, it's gotten simpler as his tenure has gone on. And I don't know if that's causation or correlation or whatever, but it just seems like as we've seen the red zone offense decline, it seems like we've seen less creativity from Sark in the red zone.
Yeah. Maybe because it's been, maybe because he didn't have a lot of time in the red. He's realized that he's got, not only a condensed amount of space and restricted space, but your time. Everything happens a whole lot faster in the red zone. Because I noticed that as well, because I think he cut out a lot of the play action and RPO stuff in the red zone early in the season. They were just going a straight drop back with Quinn and just getting right to it. It was boom, boom, one read. And I think it was just to simplify everything. So you could be right about that. Observationally, I agree with that off the top. But getting back to some of the routes, because I think you made a good point too about the screen game. I love how advanced the screens are because there are a lot of packaged plays. It seems like multiple things going on for the defense to identify and try to commit to. He does a great job of keeping the defense on their heels that way. Something else I also noticed, the swing routes, and I went back and looked at it because I got real nerdy on this thing, dude. I went back and looked at explosive plays per target and successful plays per target, like all across college football, because they give you that ability. And
you went deep down the rabbit hole.
I went deep. We won't get into all that nerdy stuff. I went into EPA per play. Maybe one day we'll dive into it. We get deep into the week. We won't do all that. But the swing route, which Texas loves the swing route, right? They love the swing route. We talked about this last week. Just on swing routes alone. You can look at Texas had 3 explosive plays just off a swing route. And that's not supposed to happen. But in Sark loves the swing route, and I think a lot of it was Quinn's ability to put the ball on the money.
Yeah,
and he knew that if I just get my running backs out in space and just get them the football on the move, that I'll be able to weaponize those guys, and they'll be able to beat one guy and make an explosive play. Swing routes are how about this? They are among the least successful and explosive plays per target. As a matter of fact, it is the least successful play per target and bottom 3 least explosive plays per target and least successful plays per route. And bottom 3 least explosive plays per route, if you will, in college football last season. Like, it's just not, you don't see teams get big plays or successful plays out of swing routes, but in Sark's offense, it's kind of an outlier and it works. And I think there are a few routes like that in Sark's offense. It works really well. The screen game, I think, is like that. That is not necessarily always the screen. Some teams use it, like Sark uses screens, like I said, at a 90th percentile. Some teams use it as just kind of a random change of pace or a boutique way, right, to break tendency or to make a team pay for being aggressive. For Sark, no, you're going to get what, 5, 6 screens in the game. You know they're coming. There'll be a couple of 2, 3 running back screens and 3 or 4 wide receiver screens. Like, that's just part of the offense. And I think ultimately it works because he has explosive players that if they break one, boom, they're to the house. And he's just got to keep throwing them. The screens and the swings. And to me, they're kind of the same ideology offensively.
Yeah, that one of the reasons why I think the swing isn't as effective, Rod, is I think, and it's why I think it works for Texas. One is I think the way some of the rules changes and the way the game's officiated now, a lot of your swing routes, especially depending on how you leverage the formation, if you're running it into, the 2 wide receiver twin side, or you got what I call that tray set where you've got twins and a tight end to that same side. A lot of times typically on a swing route, maybe you take your number 2 receiver or your number 1 receiver, maybe you're that inside receiver, maybe you're sending him on a crack. Well, now because of the way blocking back against the play and blindside blocks and things like that, the way the game's legislated, do you want to risk that crack getting called a penalty? But if you teach it right, then you can do it. I think the other thing is, and in that vein, man, a lot of times on swing routes, how many times do we see like Gunnar Helm getting out there? So you may have that inside receiver crack and the tight end almost pull from that side and get out in the open field. You may see an offensive lineman pulling out on a swing pass. So again, I just think the way Sark schemes it up, it's really unique and it's really diverse and it takes time. The other thing is, I think Texas has really emphasized their wide receivers. Blocking is a non-negotiable, and they are really, really good perimeter blockers. So really, all you got to think of is a swing pass, especially like you said astutely. It happens quick. It's almost like throwing a hitch or a bubble screen. You just have a blocker out there now.
Agreed.
If you got an offense where you got receivers that are good perimeter blockers, it can be effective for you. So I think that's one of the tools in Sark's tool belt, Rod, that probably not a lot of offenses in the country have, because it takes time and discipline to be really good running swing routes, and Texas is able to do it.
Yep. No, I agree with you. Is there, before we end this discussion, before we end it, I want to have one more discussion with you about what routes they should run more of, in your opinion. Mm-hmm. I have a few that I think they should run more of, just off the analytics. I think the curl route for Texas is a money route because they have so much speed that at a certain depth, all the defensive backs will respect the speed of Texas. And you should see with Xavier Worthy all the time with those 17-yard curls. And then once they turn their hips, if the quarterback, if you do have a lot of times it was match protection, and they would just keep everybody in and go, all right, we know where we're going. We got 2 deep curls, and we'll see. It's a split safety. We'll see the leverage of the DB, and it'll tell us everything we need to know. And we'll suck those linebackers up with the true play action, and then we're going right behind them. And that oftentimes would be money. Matter of fact, I looked at it from 2023, my notes. Dude, just on the curl route alone, if you looked at it, Texas averaged 12.8 yards per play on their deep play action curls. When they just ran curls, they always also averaged 12 yards per play. 40% explosive play rate and a 67% success rate on the play action pass curls in 2023, and an 83% success rate when they ran just curls. It was money. Sark does it. He didn't run it a ton. He started running toward the end of the year when they really started diverting from the deep ball. I think they should run more curls. I think the curl route and slants, as we pointed out last week, slants for Sark, and I know the slant, you can kind of throw it into the same category as a glance at times, and I threw him in the same bucket. But just off the slant route alone, last week I calculated 7 slants and glances, 7 explosive plays off that. I know that comes with the RPO, but man, it's just, to me, that is just a great concept for Texas when they run the RPOs and they're using the play action pass. Those slants, those glasses with guys like a Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond, Xavier Worthy, man, they pop. They pop so quickly.
AD Mitchell made a living off of those.
Oh man, they really, yeah, exactly. That's a great point. Yeah, AD Mitchell was big on those. So there you go. Any thoughts? Any routes you think Texas should run more of in your mind?
You know, similar to Quinn with Arch, you're going to be able to. Every route on the route tree is open, right? So it's not a question of does your quarterback have the ability to get the ball there. I just feel like with Arch's ability to process and maybe ability to process more and being willing to let that second or third option get open if he feels it's there. Like the Mississippi State game is a perfect example of that. The touchdown pass to DeAndre Moore, where he's got that's the route he wants. He knows he's got to hang in the pocket for a little extra time. He knows he's probably going to take a shot, but if he guessed right, it's going to be a big play, and he ends up throwing a touchdown on that play. So I think some of your longer developing plays, your play action shots, maybe those deep comebacks are a part of the offense again, your double moves. And I like the double move. I used to love, Rod, the old school Steve Spurrier smash concept, right? Where teams would play Florida off, and that smash concept, for those that don't know, basically it's one on the twin side of the field. You got somebody's going to run a hitch, at the outside receiver is going to run a hitch, and the inside receiver is going to run almost like a flag route. And it's boom, you hit the hitch, and it's like you're tired to death by paper cuts if you're a defense, right? You're getting killed with this, 6-7 yard gain on a hitch. Then when you move up, now we're going to throw that flag route and we're going to get our explosive play off of it. So I just like the fact that, maybe those comebacks can be a bigger part of the offense now. Like I said, they're going to take a little longer to develop, and then your big plays can come off that. Like I said, with your double moves, the hitch and go, your sluggo routes, your slant and go. I think a lot of that stuff is going to be there with Arch. I also think, your mesh concepts might take a little longer to develop. Some of those picks and rubs might take a little longer to develop. The more I think about it, Rod, the more I think, and I've tried to find like a good NFL draft fit for Quinn. And I've gone like to all kinds of teams. Everybody can run back the tape and see me saying, I think Quinn would fit here. I think Quinn would fit here. But as we're talking this out, I think like an old school, like Bill Walsh, West Coast quarterback, like from that tree, a quarterback's coach, I think he'd love to get Quinn as a project. Because if Quinn's footwork cleaned up, he'd be the perfect quarterback for a West Coast offense. Because what's Quinn's strength as a passer? It's rhythm, it's timing, it's getting the ball out quick. That's why some of that stuff works really well with Quinn. I just think if like Bill Walsh was still here, he'd take Quinn back. If I clean up this guy's footwork, he's going to fit perfect in my West Coast offense. So, and we know Sark buying into a lot of the Bill Walsh principles. He's a big believer in Bill Walsh. And geared his offense to fit Quinn a little bit more. I just think he's going to gear it towards Arch. So I don't know, Ryan, that's where I'm at with a long story short with Arch. I think it's going to be some of those slower developing routes. Now, you got to have some pass protection, but I also think too, we've talked about it, and we'll talk about it here when we talk about the run game. Arch's ability to run and to extend plays and keep the play alive and ad lib scramble drill is going to be something that we probably haven't had to track since Sam Ehlinger was here, but it's going to be something that's going to be a real bucket that we're going to have to create with Arch at quarterback is, hey, what's your success rate on scramble drill throws?
No, to that point about the longer developing routes, they don't run a lot of comebacks, 20th percentile. They don't run a lot of dig routes, 40th percentile. And the curl routes, they don't run a lot of those. Actually, those are 30th percentile. Those are longer developing routes. You want those deeper routes downfield for some of those. So I'm with you. I think you could get more of that with Arch and some of the old school play action pass with him as well. And getting deeper into those progressions, as you say, post routes, getting down the field on some of those longer developing plays. All right, good stuff there, Jeff. All right, let's continue the conversation talking about the Texas offense, the addition of Coach Neal Brown to the staff in an unspecified role. You have an idea of what the impact could be if it's we're just going to be optimistic here and say he's going to have a big impact. What do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, let's hope for more Gary Patterson, Paul Christ, and less Larry Fedora for special assistant impact here with Neal Brown. But I love Neal Brown, Rod, as an offensive guy because he played for Hal Mumme and Mike Leach at Kentucky. Came up in the truest form of the air raid that exists, that Hal Mumme, Mike Leach air raid. So he gets accused of being an air raid guy, but he is an air raid guy. You look at a lot of the air raid staples are part of his offense, but Neal Brown wants to run the football and be physical and play with the physical edge. And he'll use fullbacks and sniffers and extra tight ends and extra tailbacks to run the football. But the more I think about it, Rod, Neal Brown's coming to Texas at a perfect time. Number one, where we have said the run game needs to be overhauled. You need some tweaks to it. It needs to be more diverse. But two, you think about the last time Sark really had a running quarterback, a legit running quarterback. I don't know how much Sark has filed away from his 2009 and 2010, 11 offenses at Washington with Jake Locker and Keith Price. But I don't know if Sark necessarily wants to go back to those run game concepts. I think he'd like to find something new to maximize Arch. And if you start looking at Neal Brown, Garrett Green's rushing numbers the last 2 years really jump out at you. 772 yards in 2023. And by the way, it's a West Virginia quarterback, for those who don't know. 772 in 2023, 734 last year, 6.4 per carry with 13 touchdowns in 2023, 5.5 yards per carry, 6 touchdowns this past season. And what more so, going deeper into that, Rod, this past season, West Virginia tied for 11th in the country in rushing attempts that gained 10 plus yards. If you go to rushing attempts that gained 20 plus yards, tied for 23rd in the country. So they're one of the most explosive rushing offenses in 2024. You go to 2023, it really starts to show West Virginia 4th nationally in 10 plus yard gains on the ground. They had 96 rushing attempts that gained 10 plus yards. You go to 20 plus yard runs, they were tied for 10th in the country. So Neal Brown had one of the most explosive running games in the country with a quarterback that had over 700 rushing yards each of the last 2 seasons. I think he's coming in a perfect time for Sark to look. I don't think Sark is ever going to major in quarterback run. He's not going to. This isn't going to be the Urban Meyer pro spread where you're running the quarterback 15, 20 times, right? But when he does run Arch, he wants to be smart with it. So he wants to scheme it right and make sure you're maximizing the hell out of those handful of plays per game when you're going to need Arch Manning to pull the ball down and run with it. Because we know anytime you run the quarterback, your backup's one play away from being the guy. So, and I know at some point we got to have the spring ball conversation. Hey, could KJ Lacey give Trey Owens a run for QB2? But that's a conversation for another day. But I think this is Sark saying, okay, I know I've got to run Arch, but I want to be smart with it. I need a guy that can help me develop a run game to be smart with it and get the most out of my running quarterback.
Yeah, no, Sark has said it repeatedly. He doesn't major in quarterback run game, but there's no doubt that, in terms of football theory, it boosts your traditional run game. No matter what level you're talking about, high school, college, or pro, if your quarterback can run, it is going to make your traditional run game a lot more formidable. And I think Sark knows that, and it'd be a shame to waste that cheat code. So he ain't going to waste it. I think he wants to be very, very, judicious and careful and cautious about how he uses it. Because if Arch gets hurt running the football, then we're on a designed quarterback run. Yeah. That's going to be, obviously a lot of repercussions and consequences as a result of that. So I think you're right, though. He's not going to waste it. And by the way, that'll help red zone. That'll help you in the red zone as well, because that's now another player that the defense has to account for. So it'll help your red zone. hell, even this year, it helped your short yardage. I don't know if you want to be using him in short yardage situations, considering what happened versus Ohio State. So I don't know if you want to be doing that, but I think it'll also help you in short yardage because the defense has to account for him. And this is the thing, though, for Texas in the running game, because I agree with you. Last year, you just didn't get enough push in the run game. I looked at yards before, we look at yards before contact per attempt. Texas was right around 1.8 yards before contact per attempt. Just to give you, I think Notre Dame was around 2.5 yards before contact per attempt. I think Ohio State was around 2.8. So Texas, they got to get more of a push up front in the run game. That's a big part of it. Texas bread and butter run concepts. We talked about it, 32% is outside zone, just one concept. I think they want to be better at running power, which, by the way, that was one of Neal Brown's favorite concepts. They love power. They also love the outside zone. They're a big outside zone team too. So Texas wants to be good at running power. They love the GY counter. That's another one of their big concepts. So I just think ultimately, the run game, the quarterback run game, I like that. I just think they need to be more effective and they need to be more diverse in the run game. And if Neal Brown can help that, God bless him.
Yeah, I'm me, Rod. I've been a Neal Brown fan for a long time now. Bringing that hybrid spread culture, as I called it, to the Big 12, as the air raid guys were starting to leave the Big 12, you had some of these hybrid spread guys coming into the league. Colin Klein is a hybrid spread guy. Neal Brown was a hybrid spread guy. So a lot of those guys coming into the league, and we talked about them in the Big 12. People just thought everybody's just chucking the ball around 50, 60 times a game. Like, no, some of the best running games in the country the last few years have been in the Big 12.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. And they're creative run games too. Yeah. I mean, really creative run games. And I think that's, obviously Sark's one of the most creative minds out there. I feel like the run game is lacking a little creativity, don't you? I feel like and when it's working, it's great. And here's something I talked to a coach about, actually. I wanted to ask you about it since we're here in Football Theory, and I don't want to prolong things too much, but we always go over here. Trust me, we always, me and Jeff always like, let's give it that 20 minutes. That's about it. And then we always end up going like 30 minutes. Okay, so a coach that I was talking to, he said, listen, I think Texas is going to be more diverse this year. He said they were running outside zone the last couple of years because they got 3 offensive tackles that didn't got drafted, or they will be, obviously, this season, that'll be drafted from that offensive line that have been started since Sark has been here. And he said, I believe they thought that's their strength. Our strength is our tackles. Let's just run behind our tackles, man. Let them set the tone. And outside zone allows you to do that to a certain extent. And those guys did that. You did a lot of that throughout the years. And he says that he believes because now the offensive line is different, the strength is probably going to be different. It still may be at the tackles. Who knows? But he said if the strength is different on the O-line, they'll find a new way to do it, whether it be inside zone, whether it be zone counter, or start running more, trap plays or whatever, or running more counter or pin and pull stuff. He said it'll naturally, he believes it'll naturally evolve to be more diverse. Do you believe that to be the case?
Yeah, well, I think it'll be more balanced at least this year, because look at where your experience is. It's more so on the interior, right?
Yeah.
Like Neto Missoula hasn't played a ton, but he's been there for this is year 4 for him in this offense. Cole Hudson has a whole year as a starter. Campbell's going into his 3rd year as a starter. So you've got guys that have, if they haven't played a ton of football, they've been around almost for the entirety of Sark's tenure. At least, that first winning season for Sark in 2022, they've been here since then. So that's where your experience is. Now, I think the most talented guy on that line is Trevor Gooseby, but his bookend is Brandon Baker, who was a freshman last year and didn't play a ton. So, I think it's going to be more balanced, because I've said this about the run game, Rod, and I'll continue to say it. You can't assume where your strength is right now. And I think I agree with what the coach was sitting on. If you're trying to kind of psychoanalyze the Texas run game, you assumed your strength was your tackles, which that may have been right. You may have just overplayed your hand a little bit. You can't assume where your strength is right now, because you don't know. This group just hasn't played together. Yeah. So I think it's going to happen organically, and they'll figure out as they go, okay, we've been an outside zone team. Hey, maybe inside zone is better for us. Maybe our pin pull schemes are better for us. Maybe duo is better for us. Whatever. Just let it happen organically. Don't try to force something and then realize halfway through the season, we miscalculated and we've lost a couple games because we couldn't we couldn't bust a grape in the run game. No, just let it naturally happen.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, they ran outside zone, I think an average like 11 times per game or something like that. Like it was, or some maybe a little bit under that or over that. And so that was their bread and butter concept. Be interesting to see if that's 30+% of their run game like it was last season. All right, good stuff, Jeff, as always. Let's thank our sponsor once again, the accomplished Austin realtor, Laura Baker. We really appreciate her and all of her support of Owen, Texas football. Folks, reach out today to accomplished Austin realtor, Laura Baker, 512-784-0505. If you have any concerns or questions regarding real estate in the Austin area, Laura Baker and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert, and we appreciate her and her team for sponsoring Football Theory. Give her a call today. If you got any questions about Austin real estate, 512-784-0505. That's Laura Baker and her team. We appreciate them for being sponsors of Football Theory. Longtime sponsors, actually, of Football Theory. All right. Thank you, Jeff. We appreciate the knowledge and the expertise as always. Always a great Football Theory conversation. Thank you out there for joining us. Thank you for watching and for listening. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for twisting and tweaking the dials. We'll be back next week for another edition of Football Theory. For Jeff, for Matthew, and for accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker, I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Hook 'em horns.